And to Mozambique now, where residents are cleaning up damage from the Cyclone Chido. Drone video shows the extent of the devastation caused by the storm, which flattened homes and vegetation and claimed at least 3 lives. Classrooms in a number of schools were destroyed as well. The cyclone made landfall in Mozambique on Sunday after ripping through the southwestern Indian Ocean and devastating islands in the region. The French island territory of Mayotte was hit the worst. A large emergency operation is underway there. Authorities fear that thousands of people may have died. The French Red Cross has described the devastation as, quote, unimaginable. French President Emmanuel Macron says he plans to visit Mayotte in the coming days.
Cyclone Chido packed winds of more than 225 kilometers per hour when it slammed into the French territory of Mayotte. France's poorest region, with nearly a third of its population living in shanty towns with sheet metal roofs, was torn apart.
It was the wind blowing, and I was panicked. I screamed, "We need help!" I was screaming because I could see the end coming for me.
Rescue crews seek survivors and count the dead. Electricity and communication lines have been knocked out across large parts of the region, and clean drinking water is in short supply.
There's nothing much people can do. People are keeping still. They haven't moved. They're waiting for help for food, for the electricity to be back up, and water also. There's no running water.
Help is on the way from France and other French overseas territories, but it's going to take time.
This was a hurricane of unprecedented violence, probably the hurricane of the century. This level of violence hasn't been seen since 1934.
France's interior minister has arrived in Mayotte's capital to coordinate rescue efforts.
Because there are still mountains to move. So everyone needs to come together. Everyone needs to go to work. Don't panic. Don't rush. Keep your cool. Use what you've learned. You are professionals.
While they wait for promised aid, survivors pick through what's left of their lives.
Here was the dining room, and here was the kitchen. You can see the sinks. That's the fridge, the gas stove, and on the other side again, that was my bedroom.
In desperate need, thousands of Mayotte residents wait for help to arrive. French authorities say 800 more rescue personnel are expected in the coming days.
And for more on this story, I can now cross over to the journalist Daniel Brown in Paris. Daniel, it has now been 3 days since the cyclone hit Mayotte. How has the situation there developed?
Well, you could say, Gerhard, that the 320,000 Maoris are waking up to a living nightmare. Severe water shortages, destroyed infrastructure, very little electricity, and growing food shortages. I mean, you have to remember Mayotte is less than half the size of Berlin. It's mountainous and rugged, and so the challenges of bringing them aid from the outside are huge. The worst hit is northern Mayotte, where entire neighborhoods have been destroyed, and the combination of high winds and flooding has rendered these areas particularly vulnerable. And there's still a reluctance to seek shelter. I mean, many residents are hesitant to move to emergency shelters that are due to fear of being controlled. In a French department with a large proportion of people from the Comoros, they are deemed illegals, despite the fact that they are historically part of the same entity as recognized by the United Nations. And also there's the health risks, and these have been exacerbated by those risks. And so the challenges are really growing, with potential outbreaks of waterborne diseases due to stagnant water and compromised sanitation facilities.
Now, Mayotte is very far from the French mainland. Is it getting the help it needs right now?
France has dispatched rescuers, supplies, and military support, as you showed in the film earlier, mainly from neighboring Reunion Islands. It's deployed 800 police officers with an additional 800 personnel expected to arrive in the coming days. But given the scale of disaster, 1,600 rescuers may be insufficient. The magnitude of the crisis does suggest that there's a more substantial and coordinated response necessary to address the immediate needs and long-term recovery.
Now, French President Emmanuel Macron is planning to visit the island. Will he be welcome there?
Well, he said he would declare a national day of mourning, and that's a first for a natural disaster in living memory. But President Macron is not the most popular politician in this region. Ever since he mocked the people desperately trying to reach the shores of Mayotte at the beginning of his term in office, the population and especially the youth have been angered both at this and his government's reluctance to address key issues of unemployment, poverty, and security. And meanwhile, here in France, one of the opposition leaders, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, criticized the government's handling of the crisis. He states that the lack of anticipation and inadequate infrastructure investments have exacerbated the disaster's impact, really emphasizing the need for a comprehensive review of the state's responsibilities.
Now, you said Macron is not the most popular person on Mayotte. How would you describe the relationship between Mayotte residents and France?
Well, tense would be an understatement. Earlier this year, French authorities initiated the operation they called Wambushu, to dismantle shanty towns in Mayotte and expel undocumented migrants. And critics really argue that this operation targets the most vulnerable populations. The recent cycle has disproportionately affected these same communities and highlighted really systemic issues that are related to poverty and this inadequate infrastructure I was talking about earlier. So people here are juxtaposing the government's previous stance on shanty towns with the current humanitarian crisis. Then it's led to accusations of hypocrisy as the state now seeks to provide aid to areas it once was trying to dismantle.
The journalist, Daniel Brown there. Thank you very much, Daniel.
Thank you, Gerard.